in order to create new muscle memory. Be prepared for the following three things. These drills might require high amounts of repetition in order to erase your old habits and establish new and better habits in their place. One, two, or all three of these areas might have to become part of your daily homework for a while, alongside everything else you do when training your shot. And last, everyone, regardless of his or her level in the game, should come back periodically and sharpen themselves in these three areas.
Chapter 5. Training your shooting stroke.
This stroke is the final touch that you'll put on the ball at the end of the shot motion. Everything else could be correct, but if a player has a bad stroke, he or she is going to be a bad shooter. On the other hand, regardless of their footwork, or how high they jump, or almost any other factor, all great shooters have a great stroke at the end of the shot, and their strokes are almost all identical.
The big picture.
Let's look at the whole picture. When the ball is set, your elbow and wrist form two right angles. When the shot motion begins, the ball travels up the shot line with the two right angles still intact until the ball clears your eye level. But we're not going to practice any of that motion in this chapter. Instead, we're going to isolate the shooting motion from this point forward. From here to the release point is the shooting stroke that we want to develop, train, and refine.
Get set for reps.
To get in a lot of reps in a short period of time, set the ball, move it above your eyes, and then let go with the non-shooting hand. This will force you to balance and control the ball with one hand. Note that your wrist might not yet have the flexibility to form an exact 90-degree angle, but you must still bring it back as far as possible. If you don't, your elbow is forced to bend past the 90-degree point in order to balance the ball. This is not going to lead to the best possible stroke. And by the way, the flexibility in your wrist will increase with time and repetition. Before you go up with the shooting stroke, let's examine your grip. When you set the ball in the waiter position, you can observe your shooting hand position. Spread your fingers only to the point that the ball still rests on your fingers and finger pads, including your thumb and thumb pad. Don't spread the thumb too far away from your fingers. If you do, look what happens to the elbow. Your thumb and elbow are connected. Moving the thumb under the ball moves the elbow out from under the ball and away from the shot line. Not a good thing. Remember, keep everything lined up with your shot line, and the possibility of missing left to right becomes very small.
Refining the stroke.
Now let's start the shooting stroke. While maintaining balance with one hand, the elbow goes up, but the wrist is going to remain cocked. Only when the elbow is nearing full extension does the wrist quickly break. When the elbow locks out and the wrist breaks, the first three fingers will stroke the underside of the ball and send it on its way with a backspin. Your first two fingers will be the last to touch the ball and provide the final controlling backspin touch on the ball. This is the all-important shooter's touch. These two fingers control the center of gravity of the ball during the shot motion. You can train the stroke while standing, just shooting straight up into the air, sitting and doing the same thing, or lying on your back. Regardless of which of these training methods you're using, in 2 to 3 minutes you can get up to 40 to 50 strokes. Remember the key to building muscle memory? High amounts of repetition. That's what you want.
Controlling a straight flight.
Stroke training not only involves developing the backspin, but also controlling the fly of the ball along your shot line. You can test your ability to keep the ball straight by practicing with a line on the wall, a line on the ground, or the edge of a backboard. Either way, you can focus on keeping the ball straight and developing a shooter's stroke without worrying about distance.
Over the front of the rim.
If you have access to a goal, then position yourself an arm's length away from the front of the rim, set the ball in the waiter position, and stroke the ball just over the front of the rim. Try not to let the ball touch the rim. Go for a swish. See how many you can swish in a row. You might prefer sitting in a chair and doing the same thing. By the way, this is a great way to continue your shot training if you're injured. As long as the injury is not to your shooting arm, you can sharpen your shooting stroke during your downtime.
Chapter 6. Training your shot line.
Sometimes training your shot form on the basket is not the best thing to do. It's so easy to get carried away with making the ball go in that you forget what you're working on. The answer is to move away from the basket and get on the line. This is the single best way to concentrate on building your form and training the ball to stay on your shot line. You can get in a high amount of reps in a short period of time because you won't be chasing your ball all over the court.
The geometry behind the training.
Now, the goal of proper shot form is not to simply look good when you shoot, but to control the fly of the ball. How much control do you need? Do you have to be perfect? Well, of course I want you to shoot for perfection, but let's examine this mathematically. The rim is 18 inches in diameter. The men's ball is 9.4 inches in diameter. The women's ball is 9 inches in diameter. This means that if your shot hits dead center, the perfect bullseye, then you'll have over 4 inches of room on each side of the ball. In other words, your shot could be off the center by over 4 inches and yet still go in without touching the rim. By the way, I'm speaking mainly from a standpoint of right and left. When it comes to short and long, that's a function of your arc, and in Chapter 12, the NOAA system will break this down and explain it in detail you can understand. Now, we all know that shots can hit the rim and still go in, so that means you could be off your shot line by more than 4 inches, probably 5 or 6 either way, and still make the basket. So, when you're line shooting, the ball could land anywhere from here to here, and it still represents a made basket. But don't settle for that much error. If you can control the fly of the ball well enough to hit a 2-inch target like this line, then imagine how easy hitting an 18-inch rim will be.
Where's your shot line?
Now, where do you place the line? Is it under your left shoulder, right shoulder, or exactly between your legs? If you're like most right-handers who are also right-eye dominant, the line will be a few inches to the right of dead center. Vice versa if you're left-handed and left-eye dominant. However, if your shooting hand and dominant eye are opposite each other, then place the line dead center between your legs. Now, what do I mean by dominant eye? Your dominant eye is the stronger of your two eyes, the eye that you aim with. How do you determine which eye is dominant? Here's one way. Target a friend's nose through a tube at arm's length with both eyes open. You can use an actual tube or form a tube with both hands. Your friend, like this camera view, will see only one eye through the tube. That's your dominant eye.
How important is this dominant eye stuff?
If you have trouble keeping the ball straight, or if there's head movement during your shooting stroke, then test to see if your dominant eye is opposite your shooting hand. Now, if you don't have these problems, then don't worry about it. But let me give you an example of a player for whom it was important. I had a player who was a very inconsistent shooter. Great one night and missing everything the next. While I was under the goal